This is Marine Lance Corporal Catherine Arnett, and she has been in the brig since January of 2023, specifically in the Special Housing Unit or solitary confinement for the past 30 days because she refused the COVID vaccine. You're probably bringing up your phone and looking at your calendars and saying, AC, it's 2023. The COVID mandates, especially for the DOD, Department of Defense, and military members, it's been long gone. How can somebody have been arrested for refusing the COVID vaccine now? The short answer is quite possibly due to the most toxic leadership in the United States military, let alone the United States Marine Corps. If you want to hear the in-depth story of Lance Corporal Catherine Arnett and how she was charged, charges taken away, recharged, arrested, charges taken away, put into solitary confinement, and then randomly released, then please stick around and watch possibly one of the worst miscarriages of justice in the United States military for quite some time. But before we get to Lance Corporal Arnett, let me tell you about Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is one of the United States' largest injury law firms with over 800 attorneys, and they operate out of 49 different states. Morgan & Morgan has modernized the injury law process by making it super simple to submit a claim. In fact, it's 8 clicks or less. You no longer have to go sit in some stuffy office and waste hours out of your day. You can pick up your phone and submit a claim and have a lawyer representing you in less than 8 clicks. We've all been in a car accident, and Morgan & Morgan wants you to make sure that you, 1, make sure you're okay. 2, get a police report. 3, make sure you contact your insurance. And 4, get legal representation. If you've ever had to fight with your insurance company over how much they're supposed to pay you when you paid them, you know how important having legal representation is. Check out their website at forthepeople.com/angrycops. You can even dial pound law on your phone. That's pound 529. If you're injured, don't wait. forthepeople.com/angrycops. pound 529, and let Morgan & Morgan take care of you. Now that we've been educated on the legal representation, let's see why it's so important to have it with Lance Corporal Catherine Arnett. I'm going to take you back to late 2021, early 2022, when the United States government put forward the vaccine mandate for all DOD personnel. Unfortunately, the branches all seemed to lose quite a few people, and there was also a lot of suits being brought up in order to defend religious freedoms. I've gone over some of that in previous videos, which I think you should check out too. Now, Corporal Arnett was one of those people that did not want to get the vaccine. In fact, she had put forward a religious exemption. However, in May of 2022, Corporal Arnett had filed a religious exemption, but it hadn't been approved yet. In fact, no religious exemptions had been approved yet, and that's why so many suits were going on against the DOD and actually President Biden's administration via SEALs and other personnel in the military. Since those suits had not moved forward and been approved or denied, and we're still in that limbo sphere of legal matrimony, Corporal Arnett was told that she needed to leave her post in Japan, report to a plane, and fly back to California where she would be discharged. And Lance Corporal Arnett did something I don't think anybody thought to do. She said no. Corporal Arnett said, no, I'm not going to fly back to California. There's no need. This vaccine mandate goes against my religious beliefs, and since it goes against my religious beliefs, that's wrong. The mandate is wrong, and therefore any command following in regards to the mandate is something I constitutionally do not have to follow. So she just stayed in Japan and continued her job. Why didn't any of us think of this? What a baller move. You know what? That first law that you told me that I broke, it's unconstitutional. I don't have to follow that. So everything underneath it, I don't have to follow. So, all right, thanks for, I guess, wasting your money on a ticket. I'm still going to fill out all my duty stuff and continue to work on my computer as an admin Marine. Now, because of that, Lance Corporal Arnett not only got the negative, you need to get the vaccine charge, she also got failure to meet a movement, failure to go where she's told to go, and also not following the orders of a commissioned officer or a non-commissioned officer, the people in charge of her. Yet, She still worked for the people in charge of her. So while having these orders over here, Lance Corporal Arnett continued to do her job until in August of 2022, all those lawsuits stating that, hey man, you can't just blanket deny everybody's religious exemption. That's a First Amendment rights violation. Well, those came through. And now any Marine or service member that had filed a religious exemption was not to be trifled with. They couldn't be dishonorably discharged. In fact, they were all in like this weird limbo of they couldn't be fired, but they weren't allowed to really go anywhere or do anything because there was still this weird mandate involved. So what did Lance Corporal Arnett do? Well, she continued to work. Great! But in between that May 2022 and August of 2022, when she was supposed to have been removed but chose not to, one of her credentials it expired. It stopped working. She could no longer access the travel internet that the military uses and assist soldiers in their travel and the travel pay that goes along with that. There's a lot of bullshit that happens when a troop is moving from one place to the other. And she was one of the Marines that assisted in that. Now, just like any other Marine, once Lance Corporal Arnett found that she no longer had her credentials to assist in the job that she was doing, to successfully complete it for those that needed her, well, she went up her chain of command and said, hey, why has this been revoked? It's not even revoked, it's just not working. What's the deal with that? Here's what somebody might call a big deal. Now, hold on to this little nugget, because this little nugget is gonna help us in the future. Lance Corporal Arnett said, hey, if nobody knows why my stuff is not working so I can get my job done, I'm just gonna resubmit the approval my commander sent me a while back, and we'll see how that goes. So, Lance Corporal Arnett resubmitted the signed paperwork with her digital signature and new date because she signed it that day. Up the chain of command, it was approved once again, and what do you know? So much for getting the jab and flying off to California to get kicked out of the military. She's back doing her job in Japan. Click, clack, tickety-tack, tick-tack, tick it away. Well, we've gone from May to August, and now we're about to hit September. And what happens in September? Well, they get rid of the mandates. They say, hey, you know what? We're not gonna be kicking anybody out for the mandates anymore. In fact, we're gonna drop all the charges specifically for Lance Corporal Arnett here. Wow. You made it, Lance Corporal. You beat the system. You stood up for yourself. Integrity. You said it was wrong. You said it was unconstitutional. Then you did a badass thing, which is just sit there and say no. Who would have known just sitting there and saying no would have gotten so much done? You're fired. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. You need to pack up your stuff and get on that bus and go home. No, I'm just gonna stay here and keep doing my job. Well, we're gonna put charges on you. Yeah, okay, I'll wait those out. Can I do my job now? Well, yeah, but we're really upset about it. Okay. Oh, by the way, my credentials, like I gotta get access to this computer. All right, fine, but we're still mad. Whatever. All right, I'll see ya. Yeah, okay. I'll be back though. Oh, hey, I'm back. Hey, remember all that stuff that we gave you, the charges? And gonna try to kick you out and stuff? You're good. We decided not to. We think you're fine now. Yeah, I know. Because you were wrong. Oh, no, we're not gonna say that. No, we're not. No, we're definitely not gonna say that. Definitely not. But keep up the good work. Now, you would think that that's all over with, right? Oh, no. My sweet little babushkas. You see what Lance Corporal Arnett accidentally did by standing up for herself and her beliefs? She put a target on her back. Now she's the Lance Corporal that stood up to so many people above her. O's, NCOs, officers of the highest rank who don't like it when people say no. You're about to find out why. Now, some of you may not have dealt with legal jargon or been arrested or just the legal system in general. So I'm going to give you a quick legal lesson on something that I think will open up your eyes as to why I find this such an issue going forward into the rest of this story. It's something called fruit of the poisonous tree. Now, if you Google that and look it up on Wikipedia, this is a very simplified version that I'm gonna give you. If somebody, let's say a police officer or the Marine Corps, finds out that you did something wrong, but they use an illegal or not approved way of discovering that thing that you did wrong. Well, once you go to court, that gets thrown out. Now, if there's other charges that come up with it, pop, 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 pop. Oh, we found this thing that you did wrong. We found out illegally or in a wrong way. It's not acceptable for the legal standard. And then we found out all these extra things that you did below it, like an iceberg, because it was improperly discovered, illegally discovered, wrongfully in a way that's not supported by the legal process. Everything connected with that dies. I'll give you a good example. Let's say that I'm walking down the street chewing bubblegum. Now, it's illegal to walk down the street chewing bubblegum. And 2 police officers jump out and they arrest me because I'm chewing bubblegum, and that's illegal. Well, if they pat me down and then find out that I've got a bunch of guns and dope on me, and that's also illegal, I go to jail. But let's say that that bubblegum chewing statute is thrown out. Let's say while I'm arrested, a civil rights group comes in and says, that's a violation of civil rights. You can't arrest somebody for chewing bubblegum. And then the court approves that and says bubblegum chewing is legal now. Now, I go to court, the bubblegum law gets thrown out, but I've got all these guns and dopes on me, right? All the fucking drugs, all the guns, after they stop me for my bubblegum. Well, because that bubblegum law was found unconstitutional and was thrown out, everything that came from that bubblegum arrest is now thrown out at all. Once again, very simplified, trying to make this very simple. So go ahead, lawyers, pick it apart in the comments. Now that leads us to Lance Corporal Arnett. She didn't get the jab, but because they found that the jab was no longer in effect, well, I won't say unconstitutional, but because that law, that rule, that UCMJ action got thrown out from the jab, all the other charges that came with it, her failing to make movement, her not listening to her NCOs or her officers, that all got thrown out with it. Boom. Which brings us here to the middle of the story. But AC, how can it be the middle? Because it's about to get worse. I thought I told you. Vindictive officers coming after a lower enlisted men. And they've got all the power. Who's gonna possibly check them? So we've got Lance Corporal Arnett. May, she's charged with not getting the jab. August, religious exemptions are there. She's in a limbo. September, all of her charges are thrown out. Now, we're coming up to January 2023, where Lance Corporal Arnett is arrested. Why? For forgery. Don't you remember when I said that she kind of lost the ability to do the travel stuff for all of her fellow Marines out in Japan? Well, when she resubmitted that approval letter from her commanding officer and digitally signed her name and updated the date because of the digital signature and forwarded that document forward, that was a forgery. That approval was only meant for that one time. It wasn't an all-encompassing approval made by her commander. Well, geez, that's kind of weird. If I had an approval and then 6 months later somebody said, hey, you don't have it anymore, and I resubmitted it, I mean, it's not like the approval's bad. It's still approved. Weird. Well, once again, Lance Corporal Arnone says that's complete bullshit. I don't accept those charges. That's not true. She's told once again, you need to get on a plane. You need to go to California. You're going to jail. And she says, nah, I'm just gonna keep doing my job. In fact, she sends a letter. That letter was from her lieutenant colonel stating, hey, wow, thanks for doing a really good job. You're doing a fantastic job. Thanks for helping me out with my stuff. So January, she's thrown in the break for the forgery, which wasn't a forgery. And based on what that lieutenant colonel sent to her in that letter of thank you so much for doing a great job, how in the world was she doing anything wrong? Well, she missed movement again. This brings us to February 2023. Still in the brig. Well, guess what happens? The forgery charge is dropped. Now, why do you think that's dropped? I have a humble opinion. A fantastic Instagram account that also has its own website called Terminal CWO put forward the letter from the lieutenant colonel stating, hey, good job. And he raised a very good question. How could you be in trouble for forgery and yet get praised for doing such a good job? If she wasn't supposed to do it, weren't her commanding officers supposed to know she wasn't? And if they were, why did they allow her to keep doing the job? It's almost like it doesn't make sense. It's almost like somebody's just messing with this Lance Corporal just because she stood up for herself. So January, she's in the brig. February, she's in the break and has the forgery charge dropped, which, once again, just like the COVID vaccine thing, if this is dropped, the other charges below it for not listening to a non-commissioned officer, missing movement, not listening to the direct order of an officer, those should be dropped as well. It's like a reverse Jenga, or just flip it upside down. If this charge is down here, and then the other ones crumble down if the base is removed. So Jenga. Now we're in mid-April. She's flown out of Japan. She's stuck in California, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Miramar, and is in SHU, the Special Housing Unit, also known as solitary confinement, for no longer forgery, but missing movement, not listening to a non-commissioned officer, not listening to an officer. Now, I'm a little bit confused, not just, well, especially about the solitary confinement in the SHU, but just the confinement in general. This Marine doesn't seem to have a problem with floating away and not making it at the appropriate trials and pretrial conferences. She's actually really good at staying in one place. So why are we throwing her in the brig? And on top of that, why are we throwing her in solitary confinement? What, she didn't take a COVID test? It's fucking 2023. Why are we still going after this troop? That brings us all the way to May 15th, yesterday, from what this recording is. She's released from the Special Housing Unit, solitary confinement, released from the brig, and just told, hey, you gotta make it to the next court proceeding. Enjoy your freedom. Which then gives me a heck of a question. If you can do that with her missing movement, commissioned officer, non-commissioned officer, failing to follow orders, why was she locked up for this entire shit in the first place? What was the change in reasoning? What was the reasoning to lock her up? Because what this looks like, a command that's upset that a troop stood her ground and called out the bullshit, and then when she came out squeaky clean, they huddled up together and said, how do we fuck with this troop? So then everybody knows not to stand up to us when we're wrong again. Now, I'm a little long-winded, I know, so let me break it down quickly. May 2022, hey troop, get out of the Marine Corps. I'm not. All right, well, you better fly out of here. No. All right, well, between now and August, we're gonna make sure you can't do your job by rescinding your travel voucher stuff. I'm gonna reapply to do it so I can do my job. Fine. By the way, here's an attaboy email for doing a great job. Thank you. August. Hey, you can't kick people out that have a religious exemption. Sweet, she's got one. September. All of her charges now are dropped. Clean as a whistle. December 2022, January 2023. New charges, you're arrested. You forged that document so that you can continue doing your job while everybody watched you do your job and your commander applauded you in doing such a good job. February of 2023, that forgery charge is dropped, but yet all the charges that came from that forgery charge are still there. March, still confined in Okinawa. Mid-April, flown down to California, now in solitary confinement in the SHU, Special Housing Unit, until 30 days later, just yesterday, she's released and said, all right, cool, you can do whatever you want now, even though nothing's changed. Except that we've taken away charges. And after we took one away, we then put you in solitary confinement for what you're currently in. But now we're letting you go. Do you see how that ending part is confusing? It's confusing because it's bullshit. Yep. Now the Pipe Hitter Foundation, who is legally representing a whole bunch of veterans who've been, well, military members too, that have been screwed over by the military judicial system, is now representing Lance Corporal Arnaud. And I suggest that you go over to their website, which I'll put down here, and maybe a link to their Instagram in the description, and donate. And I'll tell you what my biggest gripe is out of all of this. My biggest gripe is, why do military members have to leak or throw out to the civilian world documents proving their innocence for the military judicial system to go, oh God, people know that we're messing with this person and we shouldn't be. We better stop. Why don't you just stop? Why don't you just do the correct legal thing that you're supposed to do in JAG or CID or whatever the hell else you call it at some captain's mast or UCMJ, court martial, etc. And I'll add on to this. During her confinement, for months, and Lance Corporal Arnaud was not in any contact with her parents or family or loved ones. In fact, while in solitary confinement, the only correspondence that her parents got was a quick call from a representative of the brig at Miramar stating she is eating and is well. Boop. Wow. Nothing tells me you're doing your job, making sure that the legal process is going through smoothly, and respecting my youth, my child, that I've sent to you to take care of and push through the military world and better themselves, like a 5-word phone call stating, hey, they're eating and they're well. Suck it. Boop. I can't wait to see what dirt the Pipe Hitter Foundation digs up once they go all the way in on this ridiculous command and overreach of judicial power on this Lance Corporal, who literally did nothing but her job. Watch your backs. See you next time, weirdos.
Hard work, that's what they say.
But before we get to Lance Corporal Arnett, I'm going to talk to you about some fartastic. I want to talk to you about some fartastic. It's stuck in my head. Fucking fartastic. I'm pissed off about this shit, and yet I'm still making myself laugh. Let me tell you about some
Hard work, that's what they say.
Hard work.